Hey guys, this is Priyanka Manigantan and welcome back to my channel. A big news: expert claims pilot may have deliberately crashed the Air India flight. Let's get started. Captain Mohan Ranganathan, one of the India's leading aviation experts, has pointed to the sequence of fuel cutoff switches and cockpit audio to suggest that the crash may have stemmed from deliberate actions. A leading aviation safety expert has suggested that the fatal crash of Air India Flight 171 may have been the result of deliberate human action, raising for the first time the possibility of a pilot-induced crash. Captain Mohan Ranganathan, one of the India's leading aviation experts, has pointed to the sequence of fuel cutoff switches and cockpit audio to suggest that the crash may have stemmed from deliberate actions taken in the cockpit, potentially even suicide. When the NDTV asked if one of the pilots intentionally switched off the fuel, fully aware that doing so could cause a crash, Captain Ranganathan said absolutely. It has to be manually done, Captain Ranganathan told NDTV when asked if there is any way fuel can be shut off to the engines to the Dreamliner. It cannot be done automatically or due to a power failure because the fuel selectors are not the sliding type. They are designed to stay in a slot and you have to pull them out to move them up or down. So the possibility of inadvertently moving them to the off position doesn't arise. It's definitely a case of deliberate manual selection to move it off. His remarks come just 24 hours after India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, that is AAIB, published its preliminary findings into the June 12 crash, which killed 241 people on board and 19 more on the ground. The crash marked the first fatal accident involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner since the aircraft entered commercial service in 2011. Now let's see about the crash. Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, took off from Ahmedabad Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport at precisely 13:39 IST en route to London Gatwick. On board were 228 passengers and 14 crew. 32 seconds later, the aircraft lost thrust in both engines, dropped altitude rapidly and slammed into a medical hostel just 1.2 nautical miles from the runway end. Only one person survived, the passenger seated in seat 11A, a British citizen of Indian origin. Airport CCTV footage, flight data from the aircraft's enhanced airborne flight recorder and cockpit voice recordings from the CVR offer a disturbing reconstruction of the last seconds of the Flight 171. Now let's see about the manual switch off. According to the AAIB report, both fuel control switches governing engines 1 and 2 were turned from run to cut off within 1 second of each other. The switches located on the central pedestal of the cockpit are protected by a guardrail and require deliberate effort to toggle. They are not touch sensitive and cannot be triggered by turbulence, power failure, or software glitch. I have heard that the captain had some medical history. Nothing else explains why at the takeoff point, just as rotation starts, both switches are moved one after the other to the off position. It has to be done deliberately. According to the cockpit voice recorder, one pilot asks, "Why did you do it?" And the other pilot responds, "I did not do it." This is where the report shows some discrepancies, almost like a cover-up, Captain Ranganathan told NDTV. It's mandatory for all the pilots to use headphones during the cutoff and landing. The cockpit voice recorder will clearly indicate whether the audio comes from the camera 1 or camera 2 based on the cockpit area microphone. So using vague terms like one pilot said this and the other said this is a poor reporting, he added. As per cockpit procedures, the pilot flying, in this case First Officer Clive Khander, would have had both hands on the control column during takeoff. The pilot monitoring, that is Captain Sumit Sabharwal, would have had the free hands. That pointed Captain Ranganathan said. The report also clearly states that the captain was the pilot monitoring and the co-pilot was the pilot flying, he added. The pilot flying has both hands on the control column during rotation as it's not automatic. They are focused on rotating the aircraft and setting the autopilot, so both hands are occupied. The pilot monitoring, however, is the only one with free hands. Using vague terms to suggest otherwise seems misleading. The action was deliberate, which is why I said it has to be done manually, he added.